Build a virtual agent with JavaScript and natural language processing with Dave Nugent.
So today we're going to work on building a virtual agent using Watson and also Twilio. And I was freaking out earlier today because I thought that I had the wrong slides prepared, and it turns out I had exactly the right slides prepared, which is totally how I always want all of my freakouts to go. So if you look at the bottom of your screen there's actually a little call to action to a blog post that I wrote up, and it has everything that we're going to do today in the blog post. So if you don't want to listen to me, and I totally don't blame you for that, then you could just check out that link at the bottom of your screen, and it'll bring you to this blog post, and it tells you how to go through the entire interactive lab. I see it's in the chat too. Sweet. The entire interactive lab, and you can go faster, you could go slower. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do a little presentation, talk a little bit about chatbots and artificial intelligence, and then we'll dive into the lab. And so this is going to walk you through creating your IBM Cloud account, totally free. Don't even need to put in a credit card. I'm not going to charge you anything. Your Twilio account, also totally free. I don't work for Twilio, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to charge you because they don't ask you for a credit card either. If they do, let me know and I'll knock some heads for you. And then we're going to create some services and link them all together and do some JavaScript. So this is just basically the whole lab in fast forward. Right. So with that, let's get into a few quick slides so that you can get an idea of why is any of this important and why should I care about chatbots? And just want to give a quick call out here to my friend Lizzie. Lizzie and I were former coworkers at a company called PubNub, and now she is a developer advocate at Twilio. And so Lizzie and I developed this content together, and she is totally amazing. And she would be here, except they're having some big Twilio conference today, and because of that, I didn't actually invite her. So sorry, Lizzie. It would be much better if you were here, and now everyone just has to deal with me. And so I am Dave, and I work in San Francisco, and I pay way too much in rent, and I run some meetups and conferences here, and I love going to hackathons and doing webinars and stuff like that. Basically, whatever I can do whenever there isn't a coronavirus, I'm going to be very excited to do that next year. And so let's talk about chatbots. What's the difference between a chatbot and a virtual agent? Well, in a lot of ways, they're kind of similar. And if you look at how the projected market for chatbot technologies is going to grow in the future, it's projected to be just under $10 billion by 2024. That's by Business Insider here. And actually, the compound annual growth rate for chatbots in North America, it's over 30% year on year. And that's 30% in Europe. And the biggest segment of that, the fastest growing segment, is actually expected to be customer service. Right, interacting with end users, and that's kind of one thing that chatbots are really good at. They're technologies such as artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, like internet-connected hardware, and APIs, among others. They're evolving at rapid speed. Chatbots are integrated with these technologies to offer enhanced operations, driving market demand, and then AI and audio speech-based chatbots are expected to account for the largest market share in the future. And when we're talking about customer service, when we're talking about audio, speech-based chatbots, artificial intelligence, that's where natural language processing is really important. And so what we're going to do today is we're actually going to link up our Twilio chatbot. Twilio does a lot of stuff with text messages and messaging and chat. We're going to link it up to our IBM Watson natural language processing. So natural language processing, it's the branch of AI that deals with the interaction between computers and humans using the natural language. And the ultimate objective is to read, decipher, understand, make sense of human words. And we're also, interestingly, going to make this lab a little bit shorter by using a naive Bayesian classifier instead of building our own custom model. So IBM Watson is this amazing collection of artificial intelligence and machine learning tools that you can use to make really, really smart applications or make your existing application really, really smart. And we're going to totally ignore all the complicated parts that you would actually use if you were implementing this in production. We're just going to use a quick NPM module to do a classification. We're going to do that just because it's really quick, it's highly scalable, not very customizable, but that's sort of the third way that we're going to make our application smart. So Three smart concepts that we're going to deal with today. Watson natural language processing, which we just talked about. We're going to use Twilio Autopilot, which is their chatbot technology to interact between the human and the machine. And then we're actually going to have a naive Bayesian classifier to do a really quick and dirty smart matching between what people say and what the chatbot returns. Okay, so I'm sorry that I spoke so fast. I'm guessing that if I go to the chat now, there's just going to be a bunch of people complaining about me talking too fast. Oh no, just a bunch of people from Cupertino, Daly City, Nigeria, Malaysia. Oh, awesome! Wow, great to see so many people from all over. I love it. So let's jump into the lab at this point. So again, the link is in the chat on the right-hand side of your screen, and then there's also a link down there at the bottom of your screen to this blog post where my cursor is spinning madly. And so the first thing that you'll do is you'll sign up for IBM Cloud and you'll sign up for Twilio. Both of these, again, are free. You'll just need to confirm your email address. Excuse me. And so I am actually going to log in here to my IBM Cloud account, which hopefully works because I do work at IBM. So if it doesn't, that would be awkward. I guess this is where we find out if I still have a job or not. Oh, phew. Okay, still have a job. Love it. So the IBM Cloud dashboard, we have hundreds of different services and pieces of software and everything on IBM Cloud. You can see I've gotten away with creating quite a few free resources through my IBM Cloud account, 102 right now. And so if you ever want to get back to the dashboard, like back home, just click on IBM Cloud up here in the upper left. That'll bring you back to your dashboard where you can see all the different services that you've created. So let's go back to our instructions here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our Watson Natural Language Understanding Service. And again, this is super free. The way that you do that was kind of unintuitive to me the first time I used IBM Cloud, but it's this Create Resource button up here in the upper right. So click that. And then you'll get the fire hose of all the different services that we have. Over here, if you click services, you can see there's a lot. There's so many, and this doesn't even include software. But you can actually search, and we'll search for natural language understanding. And here we go. So we'll select a region, whatever is fine. And then you can see here we've got some different pricing tiers. This is my favorite pricing tier, Light. And that basically means you don't need to put in a credit card. It's free forever. You do have some restrictions. You can only put in 30,000 NLU items per month. You could get a custom model, which we're not even going to use today. But again, that's totally free. One thing to note is that light plan services are deleted after 30 days of inactivity, right? So it's free forever, but then if you upload a custom model and then you don't use it for 30 days, then IBM will just scrub it. You could still create another light service and upload another model, but just as an FYI, you want to have some sort of scheduled invocation or make sure you're actually using it. So bam, create. Let me just sit back, have a sip of coffee, soda, tea. Why do I drink that? It's so bad for me. So so we're just following along with the things that we did. We click create here, and then it's going to say, we need our service credentials, right? Because we're going to build our app inside Twilio Autopilot. And then we need Twilio Autopilot to be able to say like, hey, Watson, what is all this? And then Watson is going to be like, Twilio, chill. This is what this all means. So we need our service credentials. And the way that we do that is we click service credentials. You really have to be some kind of genius to present, stuff like this because it's so complicated. So I'm glad that I'm here to help you click service credentials like you couldn't have figured that out totally on your own. And the things that we're going to be looking at here are the API key and the URL, and we could just cheerfully ignore everything else, I believe. I'll just double check that here. Yeah, API key and URL. So just sort of hold those in your brain or, keep the tab open. And then we're going to create our Twilio function. So we'll go to our Twilio account, which I I think I have saved in my password manager. I already have an account. I'm going to log in. Hopefully by this point, you've also gone through the account creation process. Verification code. All right. I hope this isn't one of you trying to hack me. That would be very awkward. And my bank account is empty. No, just kidding. Okay, so now we're inside our Twilio dashboard. If you're going through the account creation process for the first time, it'll ask you a bunch of questions like, what kind of an app are you trying to create? Or, what kind of programming languages do you want to use? And it honestly doesn't really matter what you answer because in the end, we're just going to do our own thing anyway. But yeah, so you'll probably get some sort of trial balance. I think the sign up link that I gave you gives you like a $10, $15 credit, something like that. I don't think we're even going to use any of that though, to be honest. And then the important thing to know about the Twilio dashboard is that everything you want to do is in these three little dots here. Maybe I can make this bigger. See that? All products and services. So if you're looking at the dashboard and being like, this is really boring, it's because you want to click on all product and services right here. And this is all the different things that they do, right? So Twilio is really well known for their SMS APIs, like you could send a bunch of text messages, and then they branched out into like phone service, and now they're doing Internet of Things, and they're doing all sorts of like really developer focused services. So we are going to use two of them. We are going to use, and I think that I actually brought them out. We're going to use Twilio functions, which is really cool. It lets you execute arbitrary JavaScript in Twilio's cloud. We'll probably use the debugger when I mess something up. And then we're also going to use Autopilot, which is their smart chatbot technology. So I'm just going to go back to the instructions here just to see where we are. So it's going to say, let's create a function. So let's do it. And so, by the way, if you click the little pin to the right of the different Twilio products, you can actually pin them to the dock out here. So I'm just going to pin functions. Yeah. Okay. And then they sit here like they probably should, but I'm no user interface expert. So we're going to create a function. And I think we're going to do create service and maybe CFE, I'll call it. And I probably shouldn't have zoomed in that much. Let's zoom back out. Okay, so I apologize if the text is a little bit tiny here. It looks like they have actually updated their UI since the last time I gave this presentation. So this is going to be great. You're seeing it for the first time, just like I am. But the way that Twilio works with their functions, you kind of create projects and then you create functions in the projects. And then the same environment inside that project. So looks like they've got a welcome function here. And you can see that there's just sort of like some hello world code. So we are going to cheerfully replace all of that code. The old version was like this. And so you could set a path for that function, which is this guy here. Public, private, or protected. Oh, this is really nice. I like all these updated things. And then we can actually copy that to the clipboard, and we can hit our entire path to see if it's working. Let's see if I can check the service details to see if we can make this totally public. Okay, cool. So here's the domain that we're going to use. Here's the path. This is really nice. I like how they changed this. It's really turning into like a cute IDE. Sorry, I'm just geeking on the Twilio UI at this point. So I'm just going to make this public because I don't want to have to deal with Twilio authentication. Click deploy. Ah, excellent. It's deployed. So I'll copy the URL and just paste that into a browser tab, and we get our response back, our Twilio hello world response. So just to go over what we did, we created a project that's going to store all our environment variables, like our API key and our URL that we copied from Watson. We have a function, the endpoint is /welcome, and then we have some code that just returns this twiml. It's sort of like an XML for responding to Twilio requests. And so we were actually, once we made it public, we were actually able to hit that through our browser and get back the XML as a RESTful response. So sweet. Let's go back to the instructions here. So what we're going to do now that we validated that our function is working properly, we're going to move on to step 3. Call your Watson service from your Twilio function. So remember, we still have our tab open where we have our API key and our URL. And so what we can do is we can actually store these as environment variables inside our Twilio function. And so this is the old way of doing it. This is the old like UI, but it looks like we can actually do that down here under environment variables. So we have our key and our value. And so in the instructions, I said, let's call this Watson API key and Watson URL. So Watson API key, we'll go back to this bad boy. Bam. Ooh, it's working. And then we're going to do, I think in my instructions, I said Watson _URL. And we're going to copy this thing, not the quotes, just the actual text. That's not where you're supposed to paste it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so now we have 2 environment variables in our project, Watson API key and Watson URL. So then when we craft a sort of call to Watson, we can make sure that it's actually going to hit the right data center and it's going to hit the right account, the one or the right natural language service, the one that's associated with our account. But we also need to add some dependencies. And so we're going to add the IBM Watson SDK, which is a nice NPM module that everyone has access to. So dependencies. And this is just a prototype, so we can just say, whatever version you feel like, buddy. And it doesn't like me. Ah, Twilio, why did you change this right before my demo? Okay, we're going to do something else then. We are going to check out the module here on NPM. And yeah, let's just say always use this version. How about that? M Watson and 570. Okay, it like that. I'll take it. So I'll update the dev.to post with some new screenshots and some new information. We won't be using asterisks. We'll be using actual version numbers. So now we have our dependency and our environment variable. So now all we need is the code. And as any engineering manager knows, this is the easiest part. Once you choose the tool, just have your developers write the code. But actually, I've made it a little bit easy because I have all the code right here in the blog post. It's also available on GitHub. So let's see how this will work. And just to sort of walk you through what this is doing. So the whole point of this function is it's going to reach out to Watson and it's going to get back the data and give it to Twilio Autopilot. And so what we're doing is we're including the Watson SDK with authentication up here. We're going to pass in some analyze params, and this is basically telling Watson like, hey, I'm going to send you a bunch of text. This is what I want out of it. And so normally you'd say, like, I want certain sentiments, I want certain categories, I want you to identify concepts, entities, keywords, I want this many, I want, these types. But in this case, what we're doing is we're just passing empty JSON objects and saying, you know what, just give me everything. Just give me everything that has to do with sentiments, categories, concepts, entities, and keywords. And go and analyze news.google.com for the text. So we're not actually passing the text in right now, right? And then we're going to create our natural language understanding instance, pass in the API key and URL, and then we're going to take the results and stringify them and pass them back. And all this stuff up here, this is just the Twilio functions sort of like format. This is just how you define a function for Twilio functions. So if this looks weird and you're like, that doesn't make sense, it's like, yeah, it's okay. It's nothing to do with your code specifically. So copy this, go back to our function, our welcome function, very improperly named welcome function. Save this, deploy. And just so we know, what we have here is we're actually taking context dot Watson API key and Watson URL. So this is pulling the environment variables that we set earlier. So even though this is code that I wrote, it'll use your environment variables. Gosh, I feel like I should be getting paid by Twilio instead of by IBM, right? So we'll go back to our function endpoint and we'll do a refresh, and hopefully we'll get back something from Watson Natural Language Understanding. And if not, I'm blaming it all on certified fresh events, because this worked perfectly when I was doing it on my own. Oh my gosh, it worked. Okay, I take back everything I said about certified fresh events. So let's zoom in a little bit on this text. And so remember, we just told Watson, use a standard model, special model, just give me everything you got, and from news.google.com. So you can see it's identified some keywords, not surprisingly, President Trump and federal investigators, one right after the other. I'm sure that somebody could make a political joke about that. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. We've got Biden's Cindy McCain endorsement, Breonna Taylor's death. That was sad. You can see that it's identified entities, so it identified Breonna Taylor as a person. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, also sad. I really have to stop using news.google.com as a demo here, but you can see that this is, up to date information. This isn't something that I sort of prepared, and it's saying, like, oh, Joe is a person, California is a location. So it's just giving you a ton of information back, and that's kind of what we want out of this function. And in later versions of this code, we will actually go through and be much more specific about what we want back from Watson, and we'll also in the future, if you were to deploy this on your own, you would build a custom model so that instead of identifying just generic things like people and places, you could say, like, oh, this is product type A and this is inference type B, and make it much more specific to the things that you will be classifying, the language that you will be classifying, and your business use case. Okay. All right. So that's pretty cool. So now we have Twilio and Watson working together. And then it looks like in the rest of this blog post, I'm just basically repeating all the stuff that I just said. So you can cheerfully skip that. So now we're going to create a chatbot. And the way we're going to do that is with Twilio Autopilot. And there's tons of different technologies that you could use to build these chatbots. There's a lot of open source technologies. You could do it with different IBM technologies even. But in this case, we're going to use Twilio Autopilot. I believe it's still in beta, but it's really cool. And it has some smart characteristics too. And so we'll talk about that. So going back to our Twilio dashboard, we're going to hit Autopilot. If you haven't pinned it, then it'll be here under all products and services, Autopilot. Nice. And I believe we're just going to build one from scratch. And we're going to choose a unique name. Let's do CFE. Okay, nice. And so by default, it is going to create some default tasks for your bot, like give me a greeting and say goodbye. And so down here in the lower right, there's a simulate link. And so if you click that, it will actually run your bot in this little simulator. You could obviously hook this bot up to all sorts of things. Simon, I see that you said you've used Twilio to send out text alerts before. So you could have this bot actually be communicating over an SMS bridge, right? Like I text the bot something and the bot responds, and then I text the bot something back. You could have it be working over voice. In this case, we're just going to be using the little text simulator here. You could have a React plugin on your web page, and you could have people be chatting with the bot through that. So I'll just say hello, and the bot says, hello, what can I help you with today? And then I'll say goodbye. And the bot says, thank you, please reach out if you need anything, right? So I'm basically just triggering the different tasks here. And if we look inside each of these, I'll go into greeting. You can see that there's actually a bunch of different sample things that when the user says this, and again, this could be over text, this could be over voice, whatever, then that is an indication that we want to respond with the greeting task. So if you say, hi there, what do you do? What can you do? What's up? What's up? Okay, so they maybe were a little too categorical about this, but this will trigger the welcome bot, and the bot will say something welcoming. And so the nice thing about this, about autopilot, is that this isn't just a big if-else statement, right? This is actually smart and uses machine learning. So what happens is that you put in a number of these samples that are associated with each task, and then after you add a few, so what is this? This is all like, hello, what's up, good afternoon. Let's add another one, like, hi dog, I heard you like Twilio. So we'll add the sample, and that'll trigger the greeting response, and then we'll actually we can actually rebuild the model automatically. So click that. It might take a little while. I probably shouldn't have done that in a live demo. But basically what Autopilot is doing is it's actually building a machine learning model, or it's rebuilding its model based on this input. And so that now if you go in and you say something that's close to one of these, or more likely to be one of these than another task that Twilio has defined in your bot, then it will automatically put it in. And you won't get things like, oh, there wasn't an apostrophe, so I didn't put you into this correct task. So that's really cool. So that's the first sort of like smart way that that a user will interact with your bot, is being able to be sent to the appropriate task. And then the second smart way is going to be getting back the detailed insights through Watson natural language understanding. So let's just go back through our so what we're going to do, the sort of weird task that Lizzie and I decided to make our bot do is to give people a survey about JavaScript. So we wanted to match people with their favorite JavaScript framework based on the text that they responded to a survey about JavaScript questions about. So, I mean, we kind of we were deep into a meeting. We got a little bit punchy. We probably went a little too far down the rabbit hole. If you don't like JavaScript, you probably won't like the next 15 minutes of this, and I apologize deeply for that. But hopefully it'll be fun no matter what. So we're going to create a task called Take JS Survey. So let's do that. Go back to all tasks. And so this is, you might think, I think in Watson we use the term intents. If the user expresses the intent that they want to take the survey, then we'll sort of put them into this conversational tree. And so let's talk about what would we say if we wanted people to take the survey? Like, I want to take the survey. I want to take the JS survey. Maybe you're just like somebody who goes into a fast food restaurant and orders the meal, like the number 5 meal, you know? You just say JavaScript. Survey time. What programming framework am I? Okay, so we got 5, and we will build the model because we don't have one yet. And then while that model is building, let's go back here. And so in each task, you can program it or you can train it. So training it is sort of all the words that are going to invoke this task. And you're going to actually build the model. Oh, my friend Jesse is calling me. Jesse, I'm really sorry. I'm not going to pick up your phone call. If you're calling me about a problem with my code, then I would pick up your phone call, but I don't think you are. And so what we can actually do while the model's training is we can actually switch to programming the task. So this is all the code that we're going to actually execute with regard to this task once it's invoked. And you can see that that this is actually not like a standard JSON thing. It's more of like a Twilio specific JSON thing. And so I have some code that you can steal. Right, some more code that you could steal that will create a JavaScript survey for you. So let's go in here and we'll paste this code in. And so what does this do? Well, this basically says, I want to ask you all these questions. And I'm going to take all the information that you type in or say in or text in or anything like that. I'm going to take that and I'm going to do something with it. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to post it to a particular URL. And so these are the questions that I'm going to ask. They're just going to be asked in order. This is not a particularly smart part of the chatbot. We're basically just taking all the data from all the responses and sending it to Watson Natural Language Understanding. Okay. So we've got our URL goes here. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to put in the URL to the Twilio function that we just created, right? So I'm going to, I guess I'll just open it up in another tab. Oh no, I have it here. Okay, so this is our function, right? This is our URL. And just to go back to where we got this, dig back into our function code. So we've got cfe, that was the project that we created. And then we've got our function, it's deployed, and then we can do this copy URL here. So if you copy this URL, then you'll get that globally accessible URL to the function endpoint. And also, I've made this public. I don't know actually private or protected if they work with autopilot. If anybody knows, let me know. But if you do run into errors, you may need to make it public just for like demo purposes, but probably not. I would think that anything in your account could like communicate with everything else in your account. Okay, cool. So let's just see if I've copied that properly. Yes. Oh, this autopilot is going to be interacting with the user. We've got the sample welcome task, the sample goodbye task, and we've also got this take.js survey task that's going to take all this data, shove it over into Watson, into the Twilio function that's going to communicate with Watson. I like to make things complicated, apparently. I'm sorry about that. But it's really cool. I mean, this is all serverless, you know, code's all executing in the cloud. There's no environment configuration, anything like that. Okay, so save that, saved, love it. But now we're going to have to add a little bit more to our function, because right now our function is just scanning Google News and giving us some depressing classifications back. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to update the code again. We're going to we're going to include our naive Bayesian classifier. Let's just make sure I get the version right for that. 212. So let's go back to functions. Oh, actually, I have that open right here. Go to dependencies, and we'll add which 212. Yeah, nice. Go back to our instructions here, and then yeah, I have a bunch of code here. So we're going to replace the code with all this code from my GitHub. Let me just open that here. I think it was a little long to paste into the blog post. So you can see we still have our exports handler equals function Twilio stuff up here at the top, but then we just like had a bunch. Oh my God, so much code. And so I'll go through this a little rapidly. Also, another reason to apologize is when I was doing this, I was on like an anti-for loop crusade, and so it just uses a ton of recursive nonsense. So if you're looking through this and you're like, why didn't Dave just use for loops? I was like on a recursion bender, so there's just tons of maps and stuff like that. So sorry about that. We're going to have a few frameworks. We defined Angular, React, Vue, Ember, and Backbone with a description for each. We're still going to be requiring the IBM Watson SDK. First thing we're going to do is we are going to build our Bayesian model using this data up here so that we can more easily classify you. We're going to say the text that we're going to send to Watson Natural Language Understanding is just going to be all the input text that we got from the user, which was actually passed in here from the Twilio collected data JS survey. This is just like Twilio functionality. So we're taking all that data that was passed into us from the JS survey, and we're going to pass it over to Watson Natural Language Understanding. And we still want a bunch of stuff coming back, but we only want 3 keywords. And there's a whole, you can specify so much about what kind of data you want back from Watson up here. So then we're going to classify you, and then we're going to actually say back, we're going to actually create a Twilio response and say back, we detected these sentiments, and so we think that you are this JavaScript framework. And then we're going to, yeah, that's it. Do the callback, execute the callback. So kind of just copy all this, and the link again is inside that blog post that's linked down there at the bottom of your screen. Got our functions. Oh, yeah, this guy, still called welcome. No reason for it to be called welcome. It still is. Okay, so we are going to save this. Excellent. And now we will deploy. Fingers crossed again. I'm just monitoring the chat now and seeing Simon says React can be cured with Vue. Oh, fighting words, Simon, indeed. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes right now. Okay, so we've updated our Twilio function, and now we can go back to our autopilot. And hopefully, so we have our samples for a Take.js survey, our greeting, our goodbye. Let me just double check if there's anything else that I need to do. I think that's it. Okay, so let's see if this works. So remember, we can click down here, simulate in the lower right, and we get our text simulator. I'm just going to start over. So it's thinking. Okay, nice. So type a message. So let's try to invoke the greeting task. Hi. It's thinking. Ah, awesome. So we got into the greeting task. So now let's see if we can get into the take.js survey task. I want to take the JavaScript survey. So this isn't necessarily one of the messages that we put in, but we have trained the model, so we're hoping that it'll work. Ooh, we got into the task. And so now this is repeating the questions that we just put in programmatically into the JavaScript backend. And so I also designed these questions to be a little bit argumentative maybe, because I want it to provoke people to type a lot, because we really want a lot of data from people to send over to the Watson language understanding service. So hello, I'm the IBM Twilio sentiment analysis bot. Tell me about your programming habits and I'll tell you what JavaScript framework you are. Please share a few sentences about the following topics. First of all, what do you think of programmers who use a graphical IDE like VS Code as opposed to Vim or Emacs? I know that like VS Code is super, super popular these days, but everyone's got an opinion on an editor, right? Like we spend our whole lives in these editors. So what do we think? What do we think about programmers who use a graphical IDE as opposed to Vim or Emacs? So I'll just say like programmers who use a graphical IDE are not real programmers. They are like graphic designers for code. Come at me. No, I'm just kidding. I love graphic designers. I'm just role playing the part of a total jerk. Okay, thanks for the feedback. Some developers contribute to open source projects, whereas others submit documentation patches or find bugs and ask for things to be fixed. What do you think of programmers who don't contribute back to open source projects in some way? Well, developers who don't contribute to open source are a bane on our profession. And also, I don't contribute to open source personally, but don't tell anyone. Okay. People can be very proud of their GitHub contribution chart, which is the visual representation of how much code they've committed each day. There was even a meme a few days ago, what stops you from programming like this, and like GitHub contribution chart. Should this be a point of pride for programmers? Yes. A healthy GitHub contribution chart is a way of signifying you have no respect for work-life boundaries and should be encouraged by all evil managers. Okay, is this okay? Some programmers believe that the number of lines of code written is extremely important. One way to pad this mythical number is to have brackets not on the same line of code, but instead on a new line. What is your take on the subject? Ooh, brackets at the end of the function, or brackets on a new line. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Maybe I'll just go totally out of left field and say, all programmers should use assembly language. I don't understand why anyone would use JavaScript. Yes. Okay, last question. A new programming hire joins your team. As they start to work on their code, you realize that instead of tabs to indent their lines, they're using spaces. What do you do to them? Be as graphic as possible. Ooh, ooh, boy, graphic. Ooh, I don't know. I don't want to lose my job. I'll just say I will quit. So now the autopilot service is done. And so it's sent our text over to Watson, and this is what we got back. We detected positive sentiments and identified the keywords graphical IDE, real programmers, assembly language. Your JavaScript framework is React. You're not the newest framework out there, but you're established, popular, and you don't have to prove anything. Nobody got fired for choosing React. So we did it, team. We created a ridiculous JavaScript survey that asked people a number of polarizing questions and then responded with 5 truly ridiculous responses that I hope don't reflect anybody out there or anybody on this stream. And we were able to take those answers, pass them over to Twilio functions, pass that over to Watson Natural Language Understanding, and get back the sentiment analysis, identified keywords. And again, this is all just using our standard model. There's nothing specific in here to programming or anything like that. So, deploying this in an enterprise environment, you'd be putting a lot more effort into creating a custom model and training it with big data sets and stuff like that. But we've been able to demo the integration between Twilio Autopilot, Watson Natural Language Understanding, and a naive Bayesian classifier. And so there's a few next steps that you could try to do down here. Obviously, training a custom model would be amazing. Linking it up to Twilio SMS would be great. You could also hook it up to different classifiers. The one that I used was just for demo purposes. I'm sure that there are better ones out there. But at this point, I would just like to ask, are there any questions? Keep in mind, there is a delay. So I'm going to be sort of yammering on for a little while. But if you have any questions, feel free to post them into the chat. I am also going to post my Twitter handle. If you haven't finished the integration and you want to reach out afterwards and you have some questions about it, feel free. My DMs are open, so I'd be happy to interact with everybody. And yeah, I'll also be updating this blog post with the new Twilio UI. I'm really happy that we were able to get all the way through this, especially considering that Twilio totally changed their UI and freaked me out, like 10 minutes into this presentation.
Thanks for watching.